Tech giants will have to change the way they do business in Europe or face fines of up to 10% of worldwide turnover. The EU's draft rules are designed to rein in the power of the American companies and bring order to chaos. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and other tech bosses control troves of data and platforms on which thousands of companies and millions of Europeans rely on. Let's have a listen in to what the Competition Commissioner, Margrethe Vestager, had to say a short while ago about the Digital Services and Digital Markets Act.
The two proposals, they serve one purpose: to make sure that we, as users, as customers, businesses, have access to a wide choice of safe products and services online, just as well as we do in the physical world. And that all businesses operating in Europe, that can be big ones, that can be small ones, that they can freely and fairly compete online, just as they do offline, because this is one world.
Brussels sees the power of Google, Amazon and Facebook as a threat to competition and democracy. Here's more on the rules for doing business in the bloc's 27 countries.
The European Commission used an advent calendar to announce its updated digital rules, a long-awaited chocolate treat for many people. Some say this new legislation could change the internet as we know it and limit, at least in some parts, the enormous power of tech giants that influence so much of our daily lives. We search with Google online, we buy Christmas presents on Amazon, we share our latest holiday snaps with our friends on Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp that both belong to social media giant Facebook. A few tech giants dominate the internet and dictate its rules. Studies show, for example, that Google's online shopping search engine is still disadvantaging rivals, despite a regulatory crackdown 3 years ago. Or let's take a look at YouTube, owned by Google. Companies like YouTube collect data from users. This information then feeds algorithms that decide which ads and which content we see online. It is not transparent how it works. The EU's legal framework for the internet is 20 years old, when the World Wide Web was completely different. It is time for an update, but it could take years to be implemented, as different EU institutions have to agree on a common line.
In the meantime, member of the European Parliament, Timo Wölken, joins us. Thanks for being on DW. How will this change the internet? Is it going to tackle fake news and hate speech and things like that?
Yes, it will. So we will have clear rules, specifying the responsibilities of platforms, especially when it comes to how platforms moderate content. So at the moment, the rules are not clear. So platforms did not have legal certainty, and the fundamental rights of users were not guaranteed. So we now have the chance to set a very clear rule book with the rules proposed today by the Commission. And I think that they will have the potential to change the internet, yes.
And this punishment of 10% or up to 10% of worldwide turnover, I mean, it sounds huge, but will it be enough to change the way these guys do business and make sure that hate speech and fake news isn't continue to be spread?
So I think it does not only sound huge, but it is really huge. So if you compare it to the General Data Protection Rules, GDPR, which entered into force a few years ago, we see that there is a fine by 4% of the turnover. So this 10% fine is way more. And we see that companies are, of course, adhering. So they are following the rules in the GDPR. So I think that this fine really is huge and can, really change the behavior of big platforms.
What about competition? What's it going to do to competition, do you think?
The whole proposal is well, we need to go a step back. So we have two proposals on the table. The one is the DSA, the Digital Services Act, which is tailored to deal with content on platforms, roughly. And we have the DMA, which focuses on the competition side.
The Market
and what
Act.
we are seeing at the Market Act, the Digital Market Act. And what we're seeing at the moment is that the competition files launched by the Commission, they take years, and in the end, the fines are not very huge compared to what the platforms earned while they were breaching competition laws. So we need a new tool, and this tool is presented in the DMA with the black, white, and gray list approach. The DMA really focuses on practices by platforms which have proven that they are harmful to the competition.
When are we going to see all of this? Because I know it's only a legal framework. It's a proposal by the Commission, and other EU institutions, including the European Parliament, will have to find a common line before this all becomes reality.
So if you take the press conference, which was delayed today by roughly 2 hours, this is maybe an indicator. So this will take long. So we are not talking about 1 or 2 years. I hope that we will finish the legislation on the DSA and the DMA within this mandate. So there are many challenges ahead. And so I'm completely motivated, and the Parliament sent a strong signal to the Commission a few weeks ago when we adopted our initiative reports on the DSA and DMA. But in the end, there will be a tough fight, at least that's what I predict, between the Parliament and the Council. So this will take years than weeks.
I hope the rest of Brussels is just as motivated as you. Timo Völken, member of the European Parliament, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Bye.
And for more, I'm joined now by Christy Platson from DW Business. Christy, this is not the first time the EU is trying to control the way big tech companies are operating. What'll be different this time?
Well, what we've seen in recent years is essentially the European Commission chasing after these companies and specific behaviors with targeted lawsuits. And big tech has frankly been relatively successful at either getting these verdicts overturned if they didn't favor them, or in just avoiding paying the fines that they were ordered to pay. So what would be really different in this case is we're looking at bottom-up legislation that would really set a framework for how these companies are allowed to behave. And the Commission really wants to get to the heart of problems like the spread of disinformation, hate speech online, and make these companies really take up more responsibility for these areas.
Right. And when you say bottom-up regulation, was there any input from tech companies as they'll be affected by it?
Yeah, great question. Well, as with any EU legislation, there's always a phase in which the public and other stakeholders are allowed to provide feedback about the idea. And of course, the companies had something to say. Google thinks it's a bad idea, naturally, saying that this is going to drive up prices for users. Their logic there is that if they're forced to pay hefty fines or to drop out of projects in which they've invested heavily, that they're going to have to pass those costs on to their advertising prices. They also said that they actually welcome clarity about what to do about hate speech, but that companies need to be given enough time to respond to instances of hate speech before being held financially liable. Right. And then there was Apple, who said that the legislation is too wide sweeping and that a company that makes tech devices like they do shouldn't be handled the same way that a social media giant like Facebook should be.
OK, so no euphoria there just yet. And of course, the EU's current legal framework, as we just heard, for the internet is 20 years old. And it could take years to implement the new rules right now. We know that technology won't wait for that, will they?
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking it will, and it's a great question. I think that it's going to be hard to say right now whether this legislation will be able to react in time. Like you said, it's going to be taking years before negotiations are done and before this can pass. And a lot of the smaller and mid-sized digital companies that are actually supposed to be protected by these laws have complained that they'll be put out of business before they even go through. On the other hand, Commissioner Vestager has really staked her legacy on reining in big tech. So I think that it's really going to come down to who has the greater influence here, the Commission or big tech.
All right. Well, we'll find out soon enough. DW's Christy Platson there from DW Business. Thank you so much.